Hi, I'm Ellen O'Neill, the owner of Ellen O'Neill Properties at eXp Realty, and today I am very excited to be with Todd Senf. He's an account executive with the Correll Insurance Group, and he is just an awesome advisor to people all over the Mount Pleasant and Charleston area, so thank you.
Thank you.
I really appreciate you taking the time to be with us.
My pleasure.
I know insurance is like this industry with its own language, and it can seem very daunting to people.
It can be.
Yeah, so like what led you to becoming an insurance expert and helping people with their insurance needs?
Well, it really was helping people. I mean, it's a job like any other job. Mm-hmm. You make a living at it, but I do get to walk people through complicated language that they may not understand, and I get to help them. That's really my main motivation.
Excellent. Helping people is a good thing to do,
yeah.
And I know you do that every day, so that's awesome. So you're with the Correll Insurance Group, and is there any particular reason why you chose to work with that agency? Or?
Well, Correll is an outstanding agency. It's older, it's well established. It's actually the largest independent agency in the state.
Wow.
It has over 200 agents, and it gives me all the tools I need to find the right policy for a particular house or risk without having my hands tied. If I was a smaller agency, I might only have one or two carriers to choose from, but I pretty much have everybody that's available.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. And the other big thing about it is that in the event of a storm and our local office is shut down without power or whatever,
True.
We have other offices across the state that will still answer the phone and be able to help my clients. So.
Oh, well, that would be huge because we all know that the risk of storms is very high.
Yeah.
Hurricane season especially, which we are in now.
Yeah.
So yeah, if there's a loss, you want to make sure somebody's going to be able to answer the phone and help you and help your family. So
yeah, absolutely.
Keeping it local, but not hyper local. Being across the state is actually an advantage in case we're out of power and.
Right. We're not gonna lose power in the entire state.
Right. Okay, awesome. So great, I can see why you like Correll, because obviously I'm picking up the trend. Service is important to you, and it seems like this company helps you provide the best service.
Yeah, and service is important across Correll. I mean, that's what we're here for.
Awesome. Okay, great. So let's think about people who own homes. When it comes time to choosing the right insurance policy for your house, if you could boil it down to one crucial piece of advice, what would you say to a homeowner?
I would say to a homeowner that you do not want to buy an insurance policy on price.
So don't use price as the determining factor?
Don't use price as your determining factor.
Okay.
You need a trusted advisor who's going to put you with the quality company with the right coverages that are suitable for your particular area, and it changes from area to area.
Right.
And you want them to be able to explain it to you.
Right, that's a critical piece right there.
It's a different language.
Yep, okay. So when it comes to living in the low country, I think about flood insurance. And can you tell our viewers an overview of how flood insurance works here in the Charleston and Mount Pleasant area, and any advice you have in that regard?
Okay. So yeah, flood is always a separate policy. It's not included in a homeowner's policy.
Okay.
So if you want to have coverage for rising water of any type, even a backed up storm drain, you have to have a flood policy.
Okay.
Flood is primarily issued by the federal government through FEMA. There's 3 zones. There's a very high-risk zone called a B zone, a special zone called an A zone, which is still high hazard, and then a preferred zone, which is not as high a hazard. That's called an X zone. Everybody in this area, in the low country, is in a flood zone of some kind.
Okay. Now, I feel like that's a common misconception, because I think sometimes people who live in the X zone, where it's a more minimal risk, they might inadvertently say, oh, we don't live in a flood zone. But you're saying every place is a flood zone. It's just there's different risk affiliated with the zone you're in.
Yeah, different levels of risk.
Okay.
And the X zone incurs roughly 20+% of all flood losses.
Okay, so if you're in an X zone, your flood insurance is basically optional?
It's optional as far as, it's optional as far as the lenders are concerned, yes.
Okay. And do you advise people typically to consider flood insurance even if they're not mandated to have it?
I do. I always advise, and I always, when I'm sending quotes to clients, I include a flood quote so that they have the knowledge to make an informed decision.
I mean, just for ballpark figures, when somebody lives in an X zone and they purchase an optional policy, is there an average range of how affordable it is?
It's in the $350 to $475 range,
Oh, okay.
depending on the value
Right.
of the house
Yep.
and the amount of coverage. But it's not that expensive.
Right, and since 20% of the flood claims come from families who live in that X zone, I think people have to really consider the facts and talk with a trusted advisor to see if they feel it's worthwhile.
Yeah, we've had some flood claims. We've had some situations where I've seen the value or the cost of these claims, and they can easily go over $100,000.
Ooh.
To dry out a house. You have to remove all the inside walls and all the floor coverings, and it can get expensive.
Okay, all right, so that is great advice and a great overview of the flood policies and how that impacts living in the Low Country.
Yeah.
And then when it comes to insurance in general, are there any common maybe misconceptions that you find people have, or any advice you want to give to people?
Yeah, I think the main thing I would say is it's good to have an advisor who's going to help you when you purchase your home and you get your initial policy, but it's also good to go back and revisit the policy a few years down the road. Coverages can be changed by the carrier when they review their book of business, and they can raise deductibles. They'll send you a little notice, but you may not catch it, and so you should have someone come back a few years and look at it and make sure it's still the right policy.
Okay, so I mean, there could be people out there who think they have certain coverages that have been taken away from the insurance carrier, and they might miss that notice.
Right, yeah, it can happen, or they can change the deductible structure so that their deductible has gone up. Specifically, earthquake has been one that there's been a lot of movement on things like that.
No pun intended.
Yeah, no pun intended.
So if you have been living in your house for 5 or 10 years and you just kind of automatically renew every year, maybe it would be time to reach out to a trusted professional and have a second look. Do you ever find that people are overspending when you have a look at a policy?
Yes, I do.
How does that happen, that somebody's paying too much? Like, what could cause that?
Well, there's a couple of ways. One is there's an inflationary adjustment by the company every year, and that can compound, just like compound interest in your savings account. It compounds the amount of coverage you have on the house,
right,
and that can snowball into a much more coverage than you need.
Okay.
And the other thing that can happen is that then they simply got bad advice, and because they purchased a house and land for, I don't know, $80,000 or $800,000,
right,
but the house might only be worth $4 and the land is worth $4, like we see on the beach. But they bought a much bigger policy when they really can only insure the house.
right.
So,
I could see that happening.
Yeah, it can happen. We have some expensive land around here, especially
Yes.
on the beaches.
Yeah, okay, great. And then, do you ever see people with certain endorsements that they just don't need? Maybe people that are working with a national company that don't really understand the perils associated with living here and the type of coverage?
Right, yeah, I've seen basically the wrong kind of deductible, not advantageous to the client, because it's the only policy that particular carrier has, and so that's what they give you.
Yes.
I've seen coverage that they should have that's not there.
Okay.
It's for a couple of reasons. Sometimes it's because they don't offer it, and sometimes it's because they don't know that here we need coverages that you may not need elsewhere.
So somebody could inadvertently be with a company who has taken their company's policy and, for lack of a better term, tried to fit a square peg into a round hole.
Yes.
And so customizing and having the expert opinion of a local insurance advisor. Independent.
An independent advisor should be appointed by multiple companies. Correll's appointed by just about everybody that writes in the state, and so it allows us to go around to multiple companies and find the one that is the best fit for a specific risk.
Awesome. And who doesn't want to know they're getting a customized plan? In
I-
any part of life.
In
right?
any part of life, yeah.
Awesome, cool. So this might get some people thinking whether they're buying a new home and need to start a new policy, or if they've just been, in a policy for a certain number of years. Maybe people are thinking they have some questions that they want answered, or to get a fresh set of eyes.
Yeah.
Would it be okay for them to reach out to you?
Absolutely.
Okay.
Yeah, that's
All
what
right.
I do.
Great. So stay tuned, and you'll see some contact info for Todd Senf with the Correll Insurance Group. And thank you again
Thank
for
you.
being here and helping us really kind of take a good look at insurance and reevaluate what matters.
My pleasure. Thanks for having me.
My pleasure.